Hello everyone, this is Mike History, and today I will be discussing the question of just how Jewish the Rothschild family really is. Now, we all know the Rothschild family as the quintessentially Jewish family, a rich family of bankers with influence everywhere, and it is no surprise that they are probably the target of more conspiracy theories than any other group of people and family in the entire world. But I started wondering just how Jewish actually are the Rothschilds. Are they still the symbol of, I guess, the stereotypical Jew, especially among conspiracy theories? Or are they not as Jewish as a lot of people think? Well, this video will attempt to find this out. Alright, so just a quick little disclaimer. I understand that when it comes to determining how Jewish someone is, that can be a bit of a tricky term. First of all, obviously, the point of this video is not religiously, because, you can't really measure someone's religiosity. And when it comes to ethnically, you could say, well, the Jewish ethnicities pass through the mother, and I understand that's how it is in Jewish tradition. However, for the sake of this video, because it is sort of a genetic/genealogical video, I am going to consider anyone with any Jewish ancestry Jewish, regardless of whether it came through the mother or the father. And the final thing, some people might say, oh, well, the Jews of today are not like as Jewish as the Jews of the past. It's true they have a lot of admixture, but I'm going by the definition. When I say fully Jewish, I mean like fully Ashkenazi Jewish in most cases, sometimes Sephardi or something else. But that's what I mean. Just wanted to put that disclaimer in. All right, and now back to the video. So let's start with the origin of the Rothschild family, which can be traced back to Mayer Amschel Rothschild, though I will start with his father, Amschel Moses Rothschild, who was a money changer and a silk trader in the Frankfurter Judengasse, which is the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt. However, his son Mayer is considered the founder of the family because he created the banking dynasty synonymous with the Rothschild name. His banking business was so successful that he is considered the founding father of international finance. In 1770, Mayer Amschel married Gutle Schnapper, who was a Jewish woman, and with whom he had 5 daughters and 5 sons. Now he was able to secure the patronage of the royal family of Hesse, and his business rapidly expanded during the French Revolution, when he handled the payment of Hessian mercenaries for the British. When Hesse was invaded by Napoleon in 1806, Mayer was able to continue as his banker and smuggled goods to circumvent Napoleon's continental blockade of Great Britain. In 1798, Mayer's third son, Nathan Mayer Rothschild, was sent to that country to expand the family business with £2.7 million. He became a British citizen in 1804 and established a bank in the city of London. In 1810, Mayer entered a formal partnership with his 3 oldest sons, founding M.A. Rothschild and Son. The following year, Karl Theodor Anton Maria von Dalberg, the Grand Duke of Frankfurt, gave Jews equal rights in exchange for them paying him 440,000 florins, and most of this was financed by Mayer Amschel Rothschild. That year, he sent his son James Mayer de Rothschild to Paris, and they soon made a profit using gold to fund the Duke of Wellington's army in Portugal. After Mayer Amschel's death in 1812, his business was taken over by Amschel Mayer, his oldest son. His second oldest son, Salomon Mayer von Rothschild, became a shareholder of the Banque Rothschild, set up by his brother James in Paris in 1817, and 3 years later he went to Austria to formalize his family's existing involvements in financing Austrian state projects. He established S.M. von Rothschild in Vienna and financed the Emperor Ferdinand Northern Railway, the first in Austria. The fourth oldest son, Karl Mayer von Rothschild, was sent to Naples after it was occupied by the Austrians in 1821. The youngest brother, meanwhile, James Mayer de Rothschild, as mentioned before, set up his business in Paris, and by 1823 was established as a banker to the French government and became the most powerful banker in the country. He financed the construction of railways and mines, contributing to France's industrialization. He became close with King Louis-Philippe I, but after he was deposed, and eventually replaced by Napoleon III, he lost some influence but was able to maintain most of his wealth and status. However, the most famous and well-known of the 5 sons was the middle child, Nathan Mayer Rothschild. He moved to Manchester in 1798 to establish a textile trading and finance business, and then moved to London, where he began dealing on the London Stock Exchange, starting from 1804. He soon made a fortune trading bills of exchange, foreign bills, and government securities. He also was a Freemason who joined the Premier Grand Lodge of England in 1802, something that up until then was rare for Jews, and I believe is probably where the conspiracy theories really began. In 1806, he married Hannah Barendt Cohen, the aunt of Karl Marx. In 1811, he negotiated with British politician and financier John Charles Harries to transfer money to pay for Arthur Wellesley, 1st Duke of Wellington's troops fighting in the Peninsular War against Napoleon. He also financed the coalition formed against France after its disastrous invasion of Russia. It's also alleged that Nathan was one of the first to hear about Napoleon's defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 because of the couriers he had sent, and these couriers informed him about the outcome before even the British cabinet found out. This allowed him to speculate on the London Stock Exchange and make a vast fortune by defrauding the British stockholders. Within a decade, he'd amassed so much wealth that he was able to supply enough cash to the Bank of England to help it avoid a liquidity crisis. After the Slavery Abolition Act, 1833, and the Slave Compensation Act, 1837, Nathan and his brother-in-law, Moses Montefiore, loaned the British government £15 million, the interest on which was paid by British taxpayers until 2015. This money was then used to compensate the slave owners. He was also a mortgage holder to a plantation in Antigua, which had 158 slaves, and received the equivalent of £300,000 in compensation. He was so rich by his death that he owned 0.62% of the United Kingdom's GDP, and had secured the Rothschilds' position as the preeminent bankers in Europe. He was said to have secured the position of financiers as the new social elite. Now, to finally address the actual topic of this video, the second generation of Rothschilds were completely Jewish, and that was because their father, Mayer Amschel, was Jewish, and so was his wife. Amschel Mayer, meanwhile, the first son, never married. Salman Mayer married a Jewish woman, Caroline Stern. Nathan Mayer also married a Jewish woman. Karl Mayer married a Jewish woman called Adelheid Herz, and finally James Mayer married a Jewish woman named Betty. The thing is that she was the daughter of Salman Mayer, and so she ended up marrying her own uncle, which, you'll see becomes common in the story. Of course, this is pretty nasty, but there was a method to the madness because after their huge accumulation of wealth, the Rothschilds did not want to lose it all through other families by getting married. Now, Betty was known for her salon and patronage of the arts, and she founded the Rothschild Hospital in Paris. Now, just in case you thought the incest was restricted to her, her brother Anselm Salman married his cousin, Charlotte, the daughter of Nathan Mayer. Like his sister, he founded a Rothschild hospital, though in Vienna. He also founded Creditanstalt, which is a major Austrian bank. Nathan Mayer's oldest son, Lionel the Rothschild, was notable for founding the British Relief Association in 1847, which raised £500,000 and became the largest private provider of relief during the Great Famine in Ireland and the Highland Potato Famine in Scotland. That year, he was elected to the British House of Commons to represent the City of London, but could not sit in the chamber due to the Christian oath required to be sworn in. John Russell, 1st Earl Russell, the Prime Minister, introduced the Jews Relief Act, which was approved by the House of Commons in 1848, but was rejected 3 times by the House of Lords. In 1850, he was re-elected and took a seat in the House of Commons, but refused to swear on a Christian Bible, and instead only swore on a Hebrew Bible. Although this was allowed, he refused to use upon the true faith of a Christian in his oath, and so was forced to leave. He was re-elected in 1852, but the Jews Relief Act was once again defeated in the House of Lords. Because this could not be solved, in 1858 the House of Lords agreed to let each house decide its own oath, which finally allowed Lionel to be sworn in. He married Charlotte von Rothschild, who was the daughter of his uncle, Karl Mayer. Now, meanwhile, his brother, Sir Anthony de Rothschild, 1st Baronet, was a key figure in the creation and management of the Chemin de Fer du Nord and the Chemin de Fer de Paris à Lyon et à la Méditerranée, the family's first rail transport business in France. He also married his cousin, Louisa, who founded the first independent Jewish women's philanthropic associations and the Union of Jewish Women, the first national Jewish women's society in the United Kingdom. Another of Nathan Mayer's sons, Nathaniel de Rothschild, also married his cousin, Charlotte de Rothschild, who was the daughter of James Mayer. She became an avid collector and befriended many famous artists like Eugène Delacroix, Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot, Henri Rousseau, and Edouard Manet, and even became a skilled artist himself. He also knew other notable figures like Gioacchino Rossini, Frédéric Chopin, Honoré de Balzac, Heinrich Heine, Georges Bizet, and Camille Saint-Saëns. Her sister-in-law, Louise, married her cousin, Mayer Karl von Rothschild, another son of Karl Mayer. In 1854, he had become the banker to the court of Prussia and eventually became a deputy in the North German Diet. a member of the German Reichstag, and became the first Jewish member of the Prussian House of Lords. In 1855, he and his brother Wilhelm Karl von Rothschild became joint heads of M.A. Rothschild and Son. Wilhelm Karl married his cousin Mathilde von Rothschild, the daughter of Anselm Salomon. Finally, we get to the family of the youngest son, James Mayer de Rothschild. We already mentioned his oldest daughter Charlotte, so we'll discuss the oldest son, Alphonse James de Rothschild. In 1855, he was appointed as a regent for the Bank of France, a post that he would hold for the rest of his life. 2 years later, he married his cousin, a daughter of Lionel de Rothschild. After France's defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, he played a major role in raising the 5 billion francs necessary to pay in reparations to the German Empire, and was so successful that it was paid early. In 1883, he founded Benito as a competitor to Standard Oil, and he tried to supply Russian oil on international markets. His younger brother, Salomon James de Rothschild, was not as responsible with his money, at least initially. He was eventually sent to the United States in 1859, and when the American Civil War broke out 2 years later, he supported the Confederate States. In a pattern that is pretty obvious by now, he married his cousin, who was a daughter of Mayer Karl von Rothschild. His youngest brother is the last of the third generation of Rothschilds, and is perhaps the most famous person in his family. Now this person was Edmund James de Rothschild, who, as is typical, married his cousin, who was Adelheid von Rothschild, the daughter of Wilhelm Karl von Rothschild. Unlike most of his family, he was not that interested in banking and helped found scientific research institutions such as the Institut Henri Poincaré, the Institut de Biologie Physico-Chimique, and the French Institute in London. He was a member of the Académie des Beaux-Arts and sponsored the archaeological digs of Charles-Simon Clermont-Ganneau in Egypt and Judith Marquet-Cross and Raymond Weil in Palestine. Speaking of Palestine, in 1882, he began acquiring land there because he became a leader in the new Zionist movement. In 1924, he established the Palestine Jewish Colonization Association, which acquired 125,000 acres of land there. He also set up the first Jewish-owned factory in the region. Although he died in 1934, his donations helped lead to the establishment of Israel. Now, the fourth generation continued the Rothschilds' tradition of incest, with Anselm Salomon von Rothschild's son, Ferdinand de Rothschild, marrying his cousin, or his second cousin, Evelina de Rothschild, who died while giving birth to their first child. In 1883, he became High Sheriff of Buckinghamshire, and 2 years later became an MP. His brother, Albert Anselm Salomon von Rothschild, took over the banking business in Austria and was also president of the Vienna Chess Association. Now, he also married his second cousin, who was the daughter of Alphonse James de Rothschild. He was also the first Jew to be presented at court in Austrian history. Another relative was Edouard Alphonse James de Rothschild, the only son of Alphonse James de Rothschild, who also became director of the Bank of France. However, this would all collapse in 1940 when a certain anti-Semite invaded France, and his puppet, Philippe Pétain, ordered the confiscation of his property. He hid a lot of his collection, but this was seized by the Germans. However, he was able to escape to New York and return to France after the Allied liberation. A similar fate befell Robert de Rothschild, the son of Gustave de Rothschild. His French citizenship was nullified by Petain's government, and so he fled to New York City as well. His sister was Aline Caroline de Rothschild. She married Edward Sassoon, a member of the Jewish Sassoon family that was known as the Rothschild of the East due to their business in Iraq and India. Her cousin was Helene van Zuylen, who was disinherited for marrying the Catholic Etienne van Zuylen van Nieuwelt, a Dutch banker. However, during her marriage, she was having an affair with Renée Vivien, one of the first 20th century lesbian British poets. Ironically, neither woman was loyal to the other in the end. Another relative was James de Rothschild, with an illustrious career in World War I. He served as a private in the French army, then as an officer in the Royal Canadian Dragoons, and then as a major in the British Army serving in Palestine. After the war, he became a British citizen and became a Liberal MP. He donated 6 million Israeli pounds towards the construction of the Knesset in Jerusalem. After his death, his cousin and wife, Dorothy de Rothschild, continued the Zionist works of her family and was a close friend of Chaim Weizmann. She became the chairman of Yad Hadanev, which is the Rothschild charity in Israel. James's brother, Maurice de Rothschild, decided to remain in France, where he was elected in 1919 to the Chamber of Deputies. During World War II, he fled to the United Kingdom. He married Noémie de Rothschild of the Jewish Pereira family of Portugal, who were the banking rivals of the Rothschild, and this helped to put a rivalry to the end. Now, among the descendants of Nathan Mayer Rothschild, one notable individual was his grandson, Nathan Rothschild, 1st Baron Rothschild. After his father's death in 1879, he became head of Rothschild and Company. He developed a strong relationship with Benjamin Disraeli, the only Jewish Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, due to his funding of the construction of the Suez Canal. He also funded Cecil Rhodes' British South Africa Company and De Beers Companies. In 1902, he became Privy Councillor and had already served as an MP for 20 years. After this, he entered the House of Lords in 1885, making him the first unconverted Jew to do so. It's not surprising that he also married a cousin, but what was unique is that the family was so inbred that she shared all four of his grandparents. His brother, Alfred de Rothschild, became the first Jew to become director of the Bank of England. The youngest brother, Leopold de Rothschild, became head of the banking business in London and served as the president of the Anglo-Jewish Association and the treasurer of the Jewish Board of Deputies. He was also the first president of Ealing Trailfinders Rugby Club. Another relative was Constance Flower, the oldest daughter of Sir Anthony de Rothschild. She was a big activist, being part of the temperance movement, and founded the Jewish Association for the Protection of Girls and Women to prevent human trafficking of female Jews. This organization turned Jewish female immigrants into British feminists and trade women for domestic duties. She became vice president of the National Union of Female Workers, and later on as its president. She was also notable for marrying a non-Jew, Cyril Flower, first Baron Battersea, who turned out to be a homosexual, which explained the lack of children. However, there was one more notable person in the fourth generation, another woman who married into prominent British nobility. And this was Hannah Primrose, Countess of Rosebery, the daughter of Mayor Amschel de Rothschild. After his death, she inherited £2 million, or £235 million today, which made her the richest woman in England. She met Archibald Primrose, 5th Earl of Rosebery, through Mary Ann Disraeli, the wife of Benjamin Disraeli. Archibald was considered to be strikingly handsome and incredibly smart, and also came from Scottish nobility. Although their engagement in 1878 was quite scandalous due to Jews not being fully accepted in British society due to both their ethnicity and their religion, it eventually resulted in marriage. Nevertheless, no male member of the Rothschild family attended in order to show their disapproval of the couple's Christian marriage ceremony. What makes this marriage particularly important, though, is that Archibald became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom from March 1894 to June 1895, although she was already dead by then. Now, with that ends the fourth generation, and we get to the fifth generation, the first generation of the Rothschild family that was no longer fully Jewish. This generation starts off with a fascinating figure, Louis Nathaniel de Rothschild, the son of Albert Salomon Anselm von Rothschild, and after his death he took over the Kreditanstalt Bank in Vienna in 1911. When the Germans annexed Austria in 1938, he was arrested at the airport, and while in prison, he was visited by Heinrich Himmler. He was released only after lengthy negotiations and the payment of $21 million, the largest bail bond for any human in history. Although he survived the Holocaust, all his possessions were plundered and Aryanized. Most of his paintings were taken by the Austrian state, which refused to return them after the end of the war. Another relative involved in World War II was Bethsabe de Rothschild, the youngest daughter of Edouard Alphonse James de Rothschild. She enlisted in the Free French forces and was part of the landing forces for Operation Overlord, moving with the army to liberate Paris. After the war, she moved to Israel and formed a dance company. Her sister, Jacqueline, married renowned Jewish cellist Gregor Piatigorsky. During the German invasion of France, they had to flee to New York. She then moved to California, where she became an excellent chess player and represented the United States in the first Women's Chess Olympiad, and by the 1960s was considered the second best female chess player in America. Their brother, Guy de Rothschild, was commander of the 3rd Light Mechanized Division during the Battle of France, and was eventually forced to retreat to Dunkirk, from where he fled to the United Kingdom. He later went to New York to join with his parents, but then returned to fight with the Free French in 1943. His ship was torpedoed and sunk, and he was rescued after spending 12 hours in the Atlantic Ocean. After his father's death in 1949, he inherited his business in Paris. He married Marie-Hélène de Rothschild, the granddaughter of Hélène van Zuylen, and her Dutch husband on her father's side. On her mother's side, meanwhile, she was half Syrian. Just like his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, he became director of the Bank of France. His general manager was none other than Georges Pompidou, who would become prime minister and then president of France. After his bank was nationalized in 1982, Guy left France to go to New York City. Another relative of theirs was Philip Sassoon, son of Aline Caroline de Rothschild, who served as private secretary to Douglas Haig, 1st Earl Haig, the commander of the British Expeditionary Force in World War I. After the war, he became parliamentary private secretary to Prime Minister David Lloyd George. He then became Undersecretary of State for the Air. Now, despite his political success, he had a secret he was hiding, which was that he was a homosexual, and as such, he had no children. His sister, Sybil Cholmondeley, Marchioness of Cholmondeley, did have children, though, and unlike her brother, who died in 1939, she lived through World War II and became superintendent of the Women's Royal Naval Service. She married George Cholmondeley, 5th Marquess Cholmondeley, a direct descendant of Robert Walpole, the first British Prime Minister, as well as, briefly, the Lord Great Chamberlain. Another relative involved in the war was Edmund Adolphe de Rothschild, the son of Maurice de Rothschild, and he was one of the 80 members of France's upper house to openly oppose Petain's government. After the Six-Day War in 1967, he contributed to the creation of the Israel Corporation, and he contributed to the creation of the Supreme Court building in that country. Another relative of his was Almina Herbert, Countess of Carnarvon, who was the daughter of Alfred de Rothschild and his French mistress. She married George Herbert, 5th Earl of Carnarvon, who is known for being the financial backer for the search for and the excavation of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. Now, another relative of theirs who had died in the area not long before was Evelyn de Rothschild, the youngest son of Leopold de Rothschild and his Italian wife, Marie Perugia. He had joined the British Army and fought in Gallipoli and later Palestine. He was critically wounded during the Battle of Mughar Ridge against the Ottoman army. However, his legacy lived on through his nephew of the same name, who was the son of his brother, Anthony Gustave de Rothschild. He became director of the Banque Rothschild in Paris and later became its chairman. Another interesting member of the fifth generation was Lionel de Rothschild, the oldest son of Leopold de Rothschild. Now, he is most notable for founding the League of British Jews, an anti-Zionist organization that opposed the Balfour Declaration that gave British support for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. They believed that the Jews could move to Palestine, but did not constitute a separate nation deserving of a homeland. But speaking of the Balfour Declaration, who was it actually addressed to? Well, none other than Walter Rothschild, the second Baron Rothschild, who was the oldest son of Nathan Rothschild, first Baron Rothschild. He worked at the family bank of Rothschild and Company for 19 years, before giving up because he never had any interest in banking. However, he is most known for the Balfour Declaration because he was an active Zionist and close friend of Chaim Weizmann, the president of the World Zionist Organization. He had been working to formulate a draft declaration for a Jewish homeland in Palestine when he received the letter from the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. His brother Charles Rothschild established the first nature reserve in the United Kingdom in 1899 and set up the Society for the Promotion of Nature Reserves. For the final person of this generation, the Primroses, their eldest daughter, Sybil, married Charles Grant, who was a British officer. Her sister Peggy married Robert Crewe Milnes, first Marquess of Crewe in 1899, in an extraordinarily elaborate wedding ceremony. Her brother, Harry Primrose, 6th Earl of Rosebery, served as MP for Edinburghshire for 4 years between 1906 and 1910. During World War I, he served as a military secretary to Edmund Allenby, 1st Viscount Allenby, who was leading the British invasion of Palestine. He also entered the House of Lords in 1929 after his father's death. At the end of World War II, he was briefly made Secretary of State for Scotland. Like his brother, Neil Primrose also became a British politician, becoming an MP in 1910, and 5 years later was appointed as Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, and then became Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury the next year. In 1917, he was also sworn into the Privy Council. He led a squadron of the Royal Buckinghamshire Yeomanry during the Third Battle of Gaza in 1917, but was wounded and soon after died. Alright, that was a lot, but now we reach the sixth generation, some of whom are still alive, including Joram Piatigorsky, the son of Jacqueline Piatigorsky, who is an American molecular biologist and eye researcher. Even younger than him is Edouard de Rothschild, the son of Guy and Marie-Hélène de Rothschild. In 2003, he became head of Rothschild and Company, but this lasted for just a year. He moved to Israel and was even about to represent it in the Olympics in equestrian events before his horse got injured. His brother, David René de Rothschild, took over the bank after his resignation, and one notable banker at this bank was a certain Emmanuel Macron. In 2015, he was indicted for fraud and is estimated at 575 million euros as of 2022. Another living relative of theirs is Anka Mühlstein, the daughter of Diane de Rothschild and Anatole Mühlstein, a Polish Jew who was a diplomat to France. Anka married François Dugéric de la Rivière, an investment advisor in Paris. Her sister Nathalie Josso pursued a scientific career at INSERM, the French National Institute for Health and Medical Research. She was the first person to identify the anti-Mullerian hormone, a hormone that plays a major role in the development of male fetuses. Benjamin de Rothschild, the son of Edouard Adolphe de Rothschild, continued in his father's business and was once valued at $1.4 billion. However, he died of a heart attack in 2021. Now, if we move back to the Cholmondeleys, Sybil Cholmondely's son, Hugh, succeeded his father as the sixth Marquess of Cholmondeley. During World War II, he fought in the Middle East, Italy, France, and Germany. He later became Lord Great Chamberlain of England between 1968 and 1990. Another war veteran was Edmond Leopold de Rothschild, the son of Lionel de Rothschild, and he fought in France, North Africa, and Italy. He became chairman of the N.M. Rothschild and Company for 5 years and played a key role in developing British interests in Japan after the war. Now, speaking of notable British families, we have the Herberts, and Almina Herbert's daughter, Evelyn, literally following in her father's footsteps, entered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. She was launched as a debutante and presented at court in 1920, where she met Brograve Beauchamp, who she would later marry. Her brother Henry Herbert became 6th Earl of Carnarvon and Elizabeth II's racing manager. Another relative was Panonica de Königsworter, the daughter of Charles Rothschild. She married French-Jewish diplomat Jules de Königsworter, a Free French hero, and worked for the Free French leader Charles de Gaulle. She served as a decoder, ambulance driver, and radio host. In addition to this, she is most likely most known for being a patron of several notable jazz musicians. Her brother Victor Rothschild, 3rd Baron Rothschild, was a member of the Cambridge Apostles, a secret society that was mainly communist, and he became familiar with members of the Cambridge spy ring of Soviet spies in the UK. After the death of his uncle Walter, he joined the House of Lords. He worked for MI5 during World War II, and after its end, he joined the Labour Party. His sister Miriam Rothschild also played an important role during the war, working at Bletchley Park with Alan Turing on code breaking. She also was able to influence the government to admit more Jewish refugees fleeing from German occupation. She was also a social justice warrior, being an environmentalist and advocate for animal welfare, and contributing to the 1957 Wolfenden Report, which decriminalized private homosexual behavior. Another prominent British family were the Primroses, and one member of this generation was Ruth Wood, Countess of Halifax, the daughter of Neil Primrose. She was one of the first 3 women to join the Jockey Club in 1977 and won the Derby the following year. Another relative was Mary Innes Kerr, the Duchess of Roxburgh, the daughter of Peggy Crewe Mills. She was also one of the first 7 women appointed as magistrates following the Sex Disqualification Removal Act in 1919. And finally, returning to France, we get to the children of Robert de Rothschild, one of which was Élie de Rothschild. During the German invasion, he and his brother were captured close to the Belgian border. He was sent to a POW camp, where he would remain until he was released in 1944. After the war, he became president of the Chemin de Fer de Paris à Lyon et à la Méditerranée, the family's rail transport business in France. His brother Alain de Rothschild owned a quarter of Banque Rothschild, and one final relative was Philippe de Rothschild, a playboy who took up Grand Prix motor racing. During World War II, he was arrested in Algeria by the collaborationist government. His citizenship was revoked, and he made his way over to the United Kingdom, where he joined Charles de Gaulle's Free French forces. His wife, Elisabeth de Rothschild, wasn't so lucky and was deported to Ravensbrück concentration camp in 1941, where she died, making her the only Rothschild to have died in the Holocaust. Now, on that depressing note, we now move on to the 7th generation, most of whom are still alive. One of these is Eric de Rothschild, the son of Alain de Rothschild. He has been the chairman of the Mémorial de la Shoah, a Holocaust museum in Paris, since 2001. Another relative is Harry Primrose, 8th Earl of Rosebery, the son of Neil Primrose, 7th Earl of Rosebery, and he was the director and later chairman of Sotheby's in the United Kingdom. Another British bigwig is Peter Wood, the 3rd Earl of Halifax, the son of Ruth Wood, Countess of Halifax, who was a member of the House of Lords from 1980 to 1999. Another of these is Henry Herbert, the 7th Earl of Carnarvon, the son of his father, who shared the same name, and he served in World War II and was a close friend of Elizabeth II. One final British peer is David Cholmondeley, the 7th Marquess of Cholmondeley, and the son of Hugh, the 6th Marquess of Cholmondeley. He was Lord Great Chamberlain from 1990 to 2022 and was a page of honor at King Charles III's coronation. However, most of the current Rothschilds are not working in anything related to finance now. An example of this is Charles Daniel Lane, the son of Miriam Rothschild, who is a molecular biologist who discovered the oocyte exogenous mRNA expression system. Don't know what that means, to be honest. Charlotte Henriette de Rothschild, the daughter of Edmund Leopold de Rothschild, is a British soprano. David Mayer de Rothschild, the son of Evelyn de Rothschild, is an explorer of all things, having spent over 100 days crossing the Arctic from Russia to Canada. He also became the youngest British person to reach both poles and one of only 14 people to ever traverse Antarctica. He also broke the record for being the fastest to cross the Greenland ice cap. He also created a ship mainly out of recycled plastic bottles to raise awareness about the Pacific garbage patch. And finally, we get to the children of Victor Rothschild, 3rd Baron Rothschild, one of whom is his daughter Emma Rothschild. At the age of 15, she became the youngest woman ever to attend Somerville College, Oxford. She served as a board member of the United Nations Foundation and a professor at the School of Advanced Studies in the Social Sciences, and she is now a professor of history at Harvard. And married to Indian economist and Nobel laureate Amartya Sen. Both of her brothers have died, these being Amschel Rothschild, who died in 1996 of suicide, and finally the man who inspired the creation of this video, Jacob Rothschild, 4th Baron Rothschild. His death 5 months ago was what prompted me to do this research, and although I did not finish it too long afterwards, I got delayed by other projects up until now. Now, he worked at Rothschild & Company from 1963 until his resignation in 1980 over a family dispute. He instead took control of Rothschild Investment Trust Capital Partners, an investment trust listed on the London Stock Exchange. He also founded St. James Places plc, a financial advice company. He was also chairman of Yad Hanadiv, the foundation which gave Israel the Knesset and Supreme Court buildings. The organization began to focus on education initiatives and environmental pursuits. Although he is dead, his legacy lives on through his children, including his daughter Hannah Rothschild, the first woman to board the chair of trustees of the National Gallery in London, and a notable filmmaker. Meanwhile, her brother Nathaniel Rothschild, 5th Baron Rothschild, inherited his father's business, an inheritance rumored to be around £40 billion. The only other member of this generation that retains the family name is Saskia de Rothschild, the daughter of Eric de Rothschild, who is a businesswoman and journalist. The other two don't have the family name and are George Herbert, 8th Earl of Carnarvon, the son of Henry Herbert, 7th Earl of Carnarvon, whose estate at Highclere Castle is notable as the primary filming location of Downton Abbey, and finally Lady Delphi Primrose, the daughter of Harry Primrose, 8th Earl of Rosebery, who has 45,000 followers on TikTok. And with that strange fact, I will leave you. Okay, so I know that was a lot. That was literally 30 minutes of explaining pretty much the history of the Rothschild, going over every single notable figure. But now that we finally got that out of the way, we will get to the genealogical part, which is to see how Jewish these people are. Alright, so we start off with Constance Flower, who was the daughter of Sir Anthony de Rothschild, 1st Baronet, and Louise de Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. Now, she married Cyril Flower, 1st Baron Battersea, who was fully English. Helene van Zuylen was the daughter of Salomon James de Rothschild and Adele de Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. She married Etienne van Zuylen van Nievelt, who was fully Dutch. Marie-Hélène de Rothschild was the daughter of Etienne van Zuylen and Nievelt, and Hélène van Zuylen on her father's side, while her mother was Syrian, making her half Arab, a quarter Jewish, and a quarter Dutch. And she married Guy de Rothschild, who was fully Jewish. So therefore their son Edouard de Rothschild would be 5/8 Jewish, 1/8 Dutch, and a quarter Arab. Sybil Cholmondeley, the Marchioness of Cholmondeley, was the daughter of Edward Sassoon and Aline Caroline de Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. And she married George Cholmondeley, 5th Marquess of Cholmondeley, and he was 98.5% English and 1.5% Dutch. Their son Hugh Cholmondeley, 6th Marquess of Cholmondeley, was therefore half Jewish, and since he married Lavinia Margaret Leslie, who was fully English, their son David Cholmondeley, 7th Marquess of Cholmondeley, is a quarter Jewish, as well as 0.5% Dutch and 74.5% English. Hannah Primrose, Countess of Rosebery, was the daughter of Mary Amschel de Rothschild and Juliana Cohen, both of whom were fully Jewish, and she married Archibald Primrose, the 5th Earl of Rosebery, who was fully English. Their son Neil Primrose married Victoria Stanley, the daughter of Edward Stanley, the 17th Earl of Derby. She was 57.5% English, 25% German, 15.5% Scottish, 0.75% Irish, 0.5% Dutch, and 0.5% French. Now their daughter, Ruth Wood, Countess of Halifax, was 53.75% English, a quarter Jewish, an eighth German, 7.75% Scottish, 0.5% Irish, 0.25% Dutch, and 0.25% French. She married Charles Wood, 2nd Earl of Halifax, who was fully English. Their son, Peter Wood, 3rd Earl of Halifax, therefore is 77% English, 12.5% Jewish, 6.25% German, 4% Scottish, and 0.25% Irish. Now Hannah and Archibald Primrose's other son, Harry Primrose, 6th Earl of Rosebery, was also half Jewish and half English. He married Eva Primrose, Countess of Rosebery, who was fully English. Their son, Neil Rosebery, 7th Earl of Rosebery, married Deirdre Reed and had Harry Primrose, 8th Earl of Rosebery, who is 7/8 English and 1/8 Jewish. He is married to Caroline Primrose, Lady Dalmeny, who is fully English, and therefore their daughter, Lady Delphi Primrose, is therefore 6.25% or 1/16 Jewish. Alfred de Rothschild was the son of Leonold de Rothschild and Charlotte von Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. He never married but had an illegitimate child with Marie Boyer, who was fully French. Their daughter was Almina Herbert, the Countess of Carnarvon, who married George Herbert, 5th Earl of Carnarvon, who was 98.5% English, 0.75% Dutch, and 0.75% French. Their son Henry Herbert, 6th Earl of Carnarvon, was 49.5% English, 25.5% French, 25% Jewish, and 0.5% Dutch. He married Catherine Momand, who was an English American. Now their son, Henry Herbert, 7th Earl of Carnarvon, was 74.75% English, 12.75% French, 12.5% Jewish, and 0.25% Dutch. Now he also married an English American, Jean Herbert, the Countess of Carnarvon. And therefore their son, George Herbert, 8th Earl of Carnarvon, is 87.25% English, 6.5% French, and 6.25% Jewish. Alfred de Rothschild's brother, Leopold de Rothschild, married Marie Perugia, who was fully Italian. Their son, Anthony Gustave de Rothschild, married Yvonne Caron d'Anvers, who was fully Jewish. Their son, Evelyn de Rothschild, was 3/4 Jewish and 1/4 Italian through his paternal grandmothers. His sons, Anthony James de Rothschild and David Mayer de Rothschild, are 1/8 Italian and 3/8 Jewish through him, as well as 1/4 German and 1/4 English through their mother, Lou Schott, who is American. Edmund Adolph de Rothschild was the son of Maurice de Rothschild and Noémie de Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. He married Nadine de Rothschild, who was fully French. So therefore their son, Benjamin de Rothschild, was half Jewish and half French. Edmund Adolph's brother, Lionel de Rothschild, married Marie-Louise Eugénie Bière, who was fully Jewish. And their son, Edmund Leopold de Lionel de Rothschild, was therefore 3/4 Jewish and 1/4 Italian. He married Elizabeth Edith Lentner, who was fully Jewish. Their daughter, Charlotte Henriette de Rothschild, was therefore 7/8 Jewish and 1/8 Italian. Alain de Rothschild was the son of Robert de Rothschild and Gabrielle Nelly Regine Bier, both of whom were fully Jewish. He married Mary Chauvin Dutreuil, a woman who was fully French. Their son, Eric de Rothschild, married Maria Beatrice Caracciolo di Forino, who was fully Italian. Their daughter, Saskia de Rothschild, is therefore half Italian, 1/4 Jewish, and 1/4 French. Henri de Rothschild was the son of James Edouard de Rothschild and Therese von Rothschild, both of whom were fully Jewish. He married Mathilde Sophie Henriette von Weisweiler, who was fully German. Their son, Philippe de Rothschild, married Elizabeth de Rothschild, who was fully French. Victor Rothschild, 3rd Baron Rothschild, was the son of Charles Rothschild and Rosika Rothschild. I'll try saying that 12 times, both of whom were fully Jewish. He married Barbara Judith Hutchinson, who was fully English. Their son, Jacob Rothschild, 4th Baron Rothschild, married Serena Rothschild, who was 97% English and 3% Scottish. His sister, Emma Rothschild, is still alive. His children, Hannah Rothschild and Nathan Rothschild, 5th Baron Rothschild, are 1/4 Jewish through their father, 1.5% Scottish, and 73.5% English. So, with all that out of the way, are there any Rothschilds who are still fully Jewish? Well, I was able to find 2. Charles Daniel Lane is the son of Miriam Rothschild, who is fully Jewish, and her husband, George Lane, who is a full Hungarian Jewish ancestry. The only Rothschild I could find who still has a Rothschild name and is fully Jewish is David René de Rothschild, the son of Guy de Rothschild, who is fully Jewish, and his distant cousin, Alix Hermine Jeannette Shea de Cromla, who is also fully Jewish. However, David René married an Italian, meaning his children are only half Jewish. So, with everything I've said, what is the average? If you take the average of all these people, and I know there's a bunch of numbers, the average Rothschild today is 43.75% Jewish, which reflects the fact that nearly all of this generation of Rothschild's parents married a non-Jew or the result of some earlier intermarrying of their parents or grandparents. And with that, we get to the answer of whether the Rothschilds are fully Jewish. Now, before I finish the video, I'm sure you have some questions. You might be asking, how did I even figure out all these statistics? How can I say this person's like 1/8 this, 1/10 this? Well, 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, really, I did a massive project on the ancestry of Elizabeth II. And so because of that, I already had a lot of useful information on the percentage of ancestry of a bunch of, notable European people, whether these be kings, queens, or nobles. And this was really helpful because even though obviously the Rothschilds are of Jewish origin, specifically 2 of the women in that family married into prominent British royal families. And so instead of having to go through that rabbit hole, I still had to go through a lot of research. I was able to connect a lot of these people back to the same people I'd done in that research. So that was helpful. And then as for the, original Rothschilds, pretty much we are only able to go back to the mid-1700s. And so that is pretty much where I get all these numbers from. Now, I know this was an extreme grind, I guess, of numbers, and so I am not in any way expecting this to be my most popular or entertaining video. But nevertheless, I thought, especially for you genealogy nerds, or just for someone who's interested in the topic, that you might have learned something new, and you might have learned a little bit about the history of the Rothschilds. I certainly did. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.